My name is Margaret Collins. At 67, I've learned that the deepest wounds often come from those we've sacrificed the most for. I raised my only son, David, entirely on my own after his father passed away when he was just 5 years old. For 30 years, I poured everything I had into giving him a good life, working 2 jobs, stretching every dollar, and going without so he could have opportunities one never did. If you enjoy this story of sweet revenge, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and share this video, and turn on notifications to get our new daily stories delivered straight to your feed. I'm not saying this to complain. I made those choices willingly out of love. What mother wouldn't? But I think it's important you understand what came before so you can appreciate what happened after. It started with a dizzy spell. Nothing dramatic, just a moment of lightheadedness while I was making breakfast one Tuesday morning. I grabbed the counter to steady myself, took a few deep breaths, and continued with my day. I didn't even think to mention it when David called that evening for our usual check-in. 2 days later, it happened again. This time I actually fainted, coming to on my kitchen floor with a small bump on my forehead where I'd clipped the edge of the table on my way down. I was more embarrassed than hurt, though the headache lingered. I called my doctor, who suggested I come in right away. After a battery of tests, he said it was likely just low blood pressure, possibly exacerbated by the new medication I'd started for my arthritis. He adjusted my prescription, told me to stay hydrated, and said to call if it happened again. I mentioned the episode to David during our Sunday dinner at my house, a tradition we'd maintained since he moved out 15 years earlier. It wasn't meant to worry him, just a casual anecdote about my week. His reaction surprised me. "Mom, you live alone. What if you'd seriously hurt yourself?" David said, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. His wife Amanda nodded emphatically. "You're not as young as you used to be. Maybe it's time to consider some options." I laughed it off. "I'm not ready for a nursing home just yet. It was just a dizzy spell." They exchanged a look across the table that unsettled me. "We just want what's best for you," Amanda said, reaching for my hand across the table. "You've taken care of David his whole life. Maybe it's time we help take care of you." I should have recognized the warning signs. The sudden increase in visits. The casual questions about my finances, my will, my insurance policies. The way they started offering to help with household tasks I was perfectly capable of handling myself. But I was blinded by the belief that my son loved me the way I loved him, unconditionally and without self-interest. 3 weeks after that Sunday dinner, David and Amanda invited me to dinner at their home. "It's been too long since you've seen the place," Amanda said cheerfully over the phone. "And the kids miss their grandma." I dressed nicely, my good slacks and the blue blouse they had given me for Christmas. I even took extra time with my makeup, something I rarely bothered with these days. I was looking forward to a lovely evening with my family. They picked me up at precisely 6, both of them unusually quiet in the car. I filled the silence with chatter about my garden plans and a book I'd just finished. Neither seemed particularly engaged, but I attributed it to work stress. David was in the middle of a big case at his law firm, and Amanda was preparing for a board meeting at the nonprofit where she was an executive director. Their home was lovely, all warm woods and modern furniture. We sat in the dining room with its gleaming table and coordinated dishware. My grandchildren, Emma and Tyler, were there briefly before being ushered upstairs by a sitter I hadn't met before. As dinner progressed, I noticed the conversation kept steering toward my health, my house, my ability to manage. Amanda's parents, the Fosters, were also present, watching me with an odd intensity that made me uncomfortable. "I've been managing just fine for almost 70 years, I said lightly. "I think I can handle a few more." After dinner, instead of the usual dessert and coffee, David cleared his throat and looked at Amanda, who nodded slightly. "Mom," he began, his voice taking on that professional tone he used in court, "we've been discussing your situation, and we think it would be best if you moved in with us for a while." "My situation?" I repeated, confused. Your health concerns, Amanda clarified. The fainting spells, the forgetfulness. What forgetfulness? I interrupted. I had one fainting spell that my doctor said was nothing to worry about. David sighed, exchanging another look with Amanda. Mom, last week you left the stove on when we visited. And you couldn't remember where you put your checkbook when we asked about the property tax payment. I frowned, trying to recall these incidents. The stove had been on because I was warming dinner rolls. And the checkbook was in my desk drawer where it always was. I just hadn't wanted to discuss my finances with them hovering over me. I think you're exaggerating a few normal moments into something they're not, I said firmly. Amanda's father, Gerald Foster, leaned forward. Margaret, they're concerned about you. We all are. There's no shame in accepting help when you need it. I looked around the table, suddenly feeling like I was on trial. I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly fine in my home. If I need help, I'll ask for it. David's expression hardened slightly. Mom, we've already set up the guest room for you. We think it would be best if you stayed here, at least until we can be sure you're stable. The word stable hit me like a physical blow. I'm not unstable, David. I had a dizzy spell from medication. Dr. Matthews adjusted my dosage, and I'm fine now. Dr. Matthews is retiring next month, Amanda said gently. We've found a wonderful geriatric specialist, Dr. Hansen, who can take over your care. You've been making medical decisions for me without my knowledge or consent. I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Mr. Foster shook his head. Now, Margaret, they're just trying to help. There's no need to get upset. That patronizing tone was the last straw. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. I'm going home. Now. David stood as well, his face flushing. Mom, please be reasonable. We're trying to do what's best for you. What's best for me is to be treated like a competent adult, not a child incapable of making her own decisions, I replied, reaching for my purse. As I turned to leave the dining room, my hip caught the edge of an antique pedestal table in the corner. I felt it wobble, heard the crash before I even saw what happened. A large blue and white vase that had been displayed on the pedestal fell to the floor, shattering into dozens of pieces. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The Ming vase. Oh my God, David, it's ruined. David stared at the broken porcelain, his face draining of color. That was a $20,000 antique, Mom. A gift from Amanda's family. I stood frozen, mortified by the accident, but even more disturbed by the looks on their faces. Not concerned for me, but for the broken object. I'm so sorry, I began. It was an accident. I'll replace it. Amanda laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Replace it? How? It was a family heirloom, irreplaceable. This is exactly the kind of thing we're worried about, Margaret. These accidents, this clumsiness. One accident doesn't mean I'm incompetent, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. David shook his head, disappointment etched in every line of his face. This isn't just about the vase, Mom. It's about a pattern of behavior. The forgetfulness, the unsteadiness, the stubbornness about accepting help. I think this settles it, Gerald Foster said firmly. Margaret clearly needs supervision. It's not safe for her to live alone anymore. What happened next still burns in my memory. David didn't defend me. He didn't reassure me. He looked at the broken vase, then at his in-laws, then at his wife, and nodded. You're right, he said, not to me but to them. She can't go back to that house. It's too dangerous. It was as if I'd suddenly become invisible, a problem to be managed rather than a person in the room. I'm standing right here, I said, my voice stronger now. And I'm going home. To my house. David turned to me, his expression hardening in a way I'd never seen before. No, Mom, you're not. We've already discussed this with Dr. Hansen. He agrees it's not safe for you to live alone. You'll stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll go get some of your things. You can't force me to stay here, I protested. Actually, Amanda said quietly, we can. David has your power of attorney. The one you signed 2 years ago, when you had your knee surgery. That was for medical decisions while I was under anesthesia. It wasn't an open-ended invitation to take over my life. David sighed heavily. Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're trying to help you. I looked at my son, this stranger wearing David's face, and felt something break inside me. The boy I'd raised, the man I'd sacrificed for, was looking at me not with love, but with cold determination. I was no longer his mother. I was a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed. If this is how you treat someone you claim to love, I said quietly, then I'd hate to see how you treat your enemies. That night, I slept in their guest room, though slept is generous. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in around me. By morning, my grief had hardened into something else, a quiet, steely resolve. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. For the next week, I played along. I smiled thinly when Amanda hovered as I took my medication. I nodded when David explained that he was handling the situation with my house. I didn't argue when they confiscated my cell phone, claiming they were upgrading it to a newer model with emergency features. They thought they were being subtle about their surveillance, but I noticed everything: the baby monitor they'd installed in my room, the way they'd removed the deadbolt from the guest room door, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. I was a prisoner in my son's home, treated like a doddering old woman who couldn't be trusted to make her own decisions. But beneath my compliant exterior, I was plotting my escape. On the 8th day, my opportunity came. David and Amanda were both at work, and the housekeeper, Mrs. Reyes, was the only adult home. She was a kind woman who had always treated me with respect, unlike the sitter who watched me as if I might set the house on fire at any moment. Mrs. Reyes, I said casually as she folded laundry in the family room, I hate to bother you, but I seem to have misplaced my reading glasses. I think I may have left them at my house last week. Would you mind terribly driving me over there to look for them? It would only take a few minutes. Mrs. Reyes hesitated. I'm not sure Mr. David would want me to take you out without asking him first. I smiled warmly. Oh, it's perfectly fine. He told me this morning that I could go pick up a few more things when I was feeling up to it. And I'm feeling much better today. She still looked uncertain, but her natural politeness won out. Well, if Mr. David said it was okay. 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of my house. The sight of it, my garden slightly overgrown, the newspaper still in the driveway, sent a wave of emotion through me that I carefully suppressed. Would you mind waiting in the car? I asked Mrs. Reyes. I won't be long. Inside, I moved quickly. I went straight to my bedroom closet and pulled out the emergency bag I'd packed years ago when hurricane warnings had threatened our area. It contained a change of clothes, basic toiletries, and most importantly, my real passport and birth certificate. Then I went to my desk and unlocked the bottom drawer with a key I kept hidden inside an old jewelry box. I removed a thick envelope containing $5,000 in cash, money I'd been saving for years, $1 or $2 at a time, my private safety net that not even David knew about. Then I took my real cell phone from the charging station in my kitchen, not the old one David had taken, but the newer one I'd purchased last year and kept as a backup. Finally, I grabbed my address book and a small photo album. The whole operation took less than 10 minutes. Back in the car, I smiled at Mrs. Reyes and held up my reading glasses triumphantly. Found them right where I left them. Thank you so much for bringing me. As we drove back to David's house, I felt a twinge of guilt about involving Mrs. Reyes in my plan. She might get in trouble when David discovered I was gone. But I comforted myself with the knowledge that he couldn't really blame her. After all, she believed she was following his instructions. Back at the house, I waited until Mrs. Reyes was busy in the laundry room, then slipped out the front door with my emergency bag hidden in a tote. I walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, my heart pounding with each step. I half expected to hear David's car screeching up behind me, but the street remained quiet. The bus arrived right on schedule, and I climbed aboard, paid my fare, and took a seat near the back. As the bus pulled away from the curb, I allowed myself to breathe. The first phase of my plan had worked. I was free. I took the bus downtown, then switched to the train heading east. By late afternoon, I had reached my destination, Brighton Beach, a neighborhood where my old friend Eleonora had moved after her husband died. We had kept in touch over the years, though our contact had become less frequent after she relocated. I hoped she wouldn't mind an unexpected visitor. Eleonora's surprise was evident when she opened her door to find me standing there, but it quickly gave way to warm welcome. "Margaret. My goodness, what brings you all the way out here?" "It's a long story," I said, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up with me. "Could I possibly impose on you for a night or two?" Of course, of course."
Come in, come in."
"You look like you could use a cup of tea and a good meal." Over tea and homemade borscht, I told Eleonora everything. The fainting spell, the dinner, the broken vase, the effective imprisonment in David's house. "They treated you like a child," Eleonora exclaimed, her Russian accent becoming more pronounced in her indignation. "Like you have no mind of your own." "Exactly," I said, grateful for her immediate understanding. "But I'm not going to let them get away with it. I just need a safe place to stay while I figure out my next steps." "You stay here as long as you need," Eleonora declared firmly. "My home is your home." That night, I sent a text to Mrs. Reyes from my backup phone. "Please don't worry about me. I'm safe with a friend. Thank you for your kindness." I didn't want her to think I'd been kidnapped or had wandered off in confusion. The next day, I called Victoria Winters, an old friend who had become a successful elder law attorney. We had met years ago when our sons were in Boy Scouts together, and though we didn't see each other often, we had maintained a warm relationship. "Victoria," I said when she came on the line, "I need your legal expertise, and I need your absolute discretion." "Of course, Margaret. What's going on?" I explained the situation, trying to stick to the facts and keep my emotions in check. By the time I finished, Victoria's voice had taken on the steely edge I remembered from her courtroom days. "They can't do this, Margaret. That power of attorney was for a specific medical event, not an open-ended authorization. And even with a valid POA, they can't just keep you prisoner in their home. That's false imprisonment. What should I do?" I asked. "David's a lawyer. He'll fight me on this." "Let him try," Victoria said grimly. "I've been handling elder law for 20 years. I've seen every trick in the book from adult children trying to control their parents' lives and assets. Trust me, we can fight this and win." Over the next few days, with Victoria's guidance, I began assembling evidence, my medical records showing Dr. Matthew's diagnosis of a simple medication reaction, bank statements proving my financial stability, even emails and texts from the past few months demonstrating my mental clarity and independence. Meanwhile, David had discovered my absence and was in a panic. He called the police, claiming his confused elderly mother had wandered away from home and might be in danger. He also contacted all my friends and neighbors, spreading the story that I was experiencing cognitive issues and needed to be returned to his care immediately. One of those friends tipped me off about David's actions. "He's telling everyone you have dementia, Margaret," she said worriedly when she called Eleonora's house. "That you're confused and paranoid and making up stories about him. Is that true?" "Absolutely not," I assured her. "I had one fainting spell from a medication adjustment. My doctor has cleared me completely." David and Amanda are trying to take control of my life for their own reasons. I thought it sounded fishy, she said. You've always been sharp as a tack. What can I do to help? That's when I realized I could counter David's narrative with my own truth. I asked Victoria to arrange a meeting with a trusted geriatric specialist for an independent evaluation of my cognitive and physical health. Dr. Eleanor Liu spent over 2 hours with me, conducting a thorough examination and a battery of cognitive tests. Mrs. Collins, she said when she had finished, I see absolutely no clinical evidence of dementia, cognitive impairment, or physical instability that would prevent you from living independently. Your blood pressure is well controlled, your reflexes are excellent for your age, and your cognitive function is above average. There is no medical reason whatsoever for the restrictions your son has tried to impose. Armed with Dr. Liu's evaluation, Victoria filed for an emergency court hearing to invalidate the outdated power of attorney and formally establish my independence. She also sent a cease and desist letter to David, warning him to stop spreading false information about my mental state. 3 days later, I entered the courtroom with Victoria at my side, my head held high, dressed in a tailored navy suit that projected confidence and competence. The sight of David's face when he saw me, clear-eyed, composed, and very much in control, was almost worth everything I'd been through. Almost. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, intimate enough that I could clearly see David's expression when I walked in with Victoria. The shock on his face was quickly replaced by a cold mask of professional detachment, his courtroom face, the one he used when arguing difficult cases. Amanda sat beside him, pale and tight-lipped. Her parents, the Fosters, were directly behind them, Mr. Foster looking irritated, as if this whole proceeding was an inconvenience rather than a matter of my basic rights. I walked past them without acknowledgement, taking my seat beside Victoria at the plaintiff's table. I wore my new suit with quiet confidence, not the confused old woman David had portrayed me to be. Judge Martinez entered, and the proceedings began with formal introductions. David's attorney, Harold Deaton, spoke first, painting a picture of a concerned son intervening to protect his vulnerable mother after a serious medical event suggested she could no longer safely live independently. Your Honor, David Collins acted solely out of concern for his mother's well-being, he concluded smoothly. He used a legally executed power of attorney to ensure Mrs. Collins received appropriate care and that her affairs were properly managed during her recovery. Victoria rose next. Your Honor, what Mr. Deaton describes as appropriate care was in fact involuntary confinement. What he calls properly managed affairs was in fact a systematic attempt to strip Mrs. Collins of her autonomy. And the supposed legally executed power of attorney was a document created for a specific medical procedure 2 years ago, with clearly defined temporal limitations. She presented the original POA document, highlighting the specific language limiting its scope to my knee surgery and recovery period. Then she introduced Dr. Liu's medical evaluation, confirming my full competence and absence of any condition requiring supervision. Furthermore, Victoria continued, Mr. Collins contacted the police reporting his mother as a missing person with cognitive impairment, a claim directly contradicted by her longtime physician's assessment and our independent evaluation. He has spread false information about Mrs. Collins' mental state to friends, neighbors, and community members, potentially damaging her reputation and relationships. Judge Martinez reviewed the documents carefully, his expression growing increasingly grave. He looked up at David. These are serious allegations, Mr. Collins. How do you respond? David stood, his courtroom confidence evident. Your Honor, I acted based on the advice of medical professionals who evaluated my mother after her collapse. Dr. Hansen conducted a thorough assessment and recommended continued supervision and care. Dr. Hansen, Victoria interjected, who conveniently became Mrs. Collins' physician without her knowledge or consent, replacing her longtime doctor who had found no cause for concern after her single fainting episode. Judge Martinez turned to me. Mrs. Collins, would you like to address the court directly? I stood, straightening to my full height. Yes, Your Honor. 6 weeks ago, I experienced a brief fainting spell caused by a new arthritis medication. My regular physician, Dr. Matthews, found no cause for concern after examination. Despite this, my son used an expired power of attorney to effectively confine me to his home, restrict my movements, confiscate my cell phone, and begin making decisions about my house and finances without my consent or knowledge. I looked directly at David as I continued. He told people I was experiencing dementia and paranoia, neither of which is true according to multiple medical evaluations. When I left his house, of my own volition and in full possession of my faculties, he reported me as a confused elderly person who had wandered off, potentially subjecting me to involuntary psychiatric hold had the police found me. Mr. Collins, Judge Martinez asked, did you consult with your mother about these arrangements before implementing them? David glanced at his attorney before answering. Your Honor, we attempted to discuss care options, but my mother became agitated and confused during that conversation. We made the decision we believed was in her best interest, given her condition. Her condition, Victoria repeated, which 2 independent physicians have now testified does not exist and did not exist at the time. Judge Martinez turned back to me. Mrs. Collins, what remedy are you seeking today? I want immediate restoration of all my legal rights, invalidation of the power of attorney document, and a court order prohibiting my son from making any decisions regarding my health, housing, or finances without my explicit written consent. Judge Martinez nodded. I'm prepared to rule on the preliminary matters today. Based on the medical evaluations and documentation presented, I find that Margaret Collins is fully competent to manage her own affairs and that the power of attorney used to restrict her movements and decision-making was not valid for that purpose. He continued, addressing David directly. Mr. Collins, you are hereby ordered to cease all attempts to control your mother's living arrangements, medical care, or financial decisions. The power of attorney document in question is declared null and void. Any further attempts to portray Mrs. Collins as cognitively impaired or to interfere with her independence could result in further legal action. He looked at Victoria. Mrs. Winters, please prepare the appropriate orders for my signature this afternoon. We're adjourned. As we gathered our materials, I finally made eye contact with David. His expression was a mixture of shock and calculation, already strategizing his next move. Amanda looked shaken, nearly in tears. Her parents sat stone-faced, clearly displeased with the outcome. Outside the courtroom, David approached, Amanda trailing behind him. Mom, we need to talk, he said, his tone regaining its usual authority. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. Has it? I replied calmly. Was it a misunderstanding when you confined me to your home? When you took my phone? When you told people I had dementia? We were trying to help you, Amanda said, her voice pleading. After you fainted, we were scared. We didn't want you to be alone if it happened again. Then you could have hired in-home care, installed a medical alert system, arranged regular check-ins. There were dozens of options that didn't involve stripping me of my autonomy. David's expression hardened. This isn't over. We'll appeal, request another evaluation. David, Victoria interrupted, stepping forward. I strongly advise against making threats that could be construed as continued harassment. The court has ruled. Your mother has been found competent. Any further attempts to challenge that finding without new and compelling evidence could be seen as vexatious litigation. David fell silent, his legal training recognizing the warning. I suggest you use this time to reflect on your actions, I said quietly, and to consider what kind of relationship you want to have with me going forward, if any. As they walked away, Victoria squeezed my arm. "Are you all right?" "Better than all right," I replied. "This is just the beginning." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. With Victoria's help, I secured my financial accounts with new passwords and security measures, ensuring David could never again access them. I changed the locks on my house and installed a security system. I made an appointment with a new doctor. Neither Dr. Matthews, who was indeed retiring, nor Dr. Hansen, who had acted without examining me, to establish proper medical care under my own control. I also began the process of updating my will and estate plan. This wasn't a vindictive move made in the heat of anger, but a careful reassessment of my legacy based on the painful revelations about my son's character and intentions. Through it all, I maintained a low profile. I didn't respond to the curious inquiries from neighbors who had heard conflicting stories about my condition. I didn't call David or Amanda, though Victoria let me know they had made several attempts to contact her about reconciliation talks. I wasn't ready to engage, not until I had fully reclaimed my life and established firm boundaries. Then, 2 months after the court hearing, I saw a small item in the real estate section of the local newspaper. Riverfront property at 735 Oakwood Drive listed for $1.2 million. I stared at the address, my coffee growing cold in my hand. That was David and Amanda's house, the grand home they had purchased 3 years ago, with its gleaming floors and designer furniture. The home where I had been confined, where I had broken the $20,000 vase that had been deemed more valuable than my autonomy. Curious, I did some online research and discovered a trail of financial trouble. David's law firm was under investigation for irregularities in client billing. Amanda had abruptly resigned from her executive position at the nonprofit. There were rumors of investment losses, tax issues, and mounting debt. I wasn't surprised, exactly. David had always lived slightly beyond his means, confident that his next big case would cover any shortfalls. Amanda had expensive tastes and social ambitions that put constant pressure on their finances. The grand house, the luxury cars, the private schools for the children, it all added up to a lifestyle that required everything to go perfectly all the time. And now, apparently, things were far from perfect. I thought carefully about my next move. Part of me felt a twinge of maternal concern. Whatever David had done, he was still my son, and I didn't wish true hardship on him or his family. Another part reminded me sharply of how quickly he had been willing to discard my well-being when I became inconvenient. In the end, I decided on a course of action that was neither vindictive nor enabling. I called my real estate agent, Sarah, who had helped me purchase my home 15 years earlier. "Sarah," I said when she answered, "I'm interested in a property that just came on the market. 735 Oakwood Drive." "The Collins place?" she asked, surprised. "It's gorgeous, but it's only been listed a few days. There's already significant interest." "I'd like to see it," I said firmly. "Today, if possible." 3 hours later, I stood in the foyer of my son's house, now staged for sale with much of the personal items removed. The real estate agent showing the property, not Sarah, but a colleague she'd connected me with to avoid awkward questions, led me through the rooms, pointing out features and finishes I already knew intimately. "And this," she said, gesturing to a small alcove in the hallway, "used to display a museum-quality antique vase, I'm told, but the owners opted to remove it for safekeeping during the sale process." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. The pedestal stood empty, a ghost of that fateful night. "The property is being offered partially furnished," she continued, "as the owners are relocating rather suddenly due to a job opportunity. They're motivated sellers." "I see," I murmured, taking in the rooms where I had been effectively held prisoner. The guest room where I had slept now looked innocent and welcoming, no trace of the baby monitor or the removed deadbolt. After the tour, I sat in my car for a long moment considering. Then I called Sarah. "I'd like to make an offer," I said decisively. Full asking price, cash, with a quick closing. And I want to remain anonymous until the deal is done. Sarah whistled softly. That's aggressive. Are you sure about this, Margaret? Absolutely, I replied. And Sarah? Make sure the offer specifies that the sellers must vacate within 2 weeks of closing. No extensions. The offer was accepted the next day. David and Amanda, facing financial pressure and unaware of the buyer's identity, were eager to close quickly. The transaction proceeded at record speed, with me signing the documents through a trust Victoria had established to maintain my anonymity. 2 weeks later, on the day of closing, I drove to the property with Sarah. David and Amanda were scheduled to hand over the keys at noon, officially surrendering the house they could no longer afford to keep. I arrived early, parking my car where it wouldn't be immediately visible from the driveway. At precisely noon, I saw David's car pull up, followed by Amanda's. They looked stressed and tired as they climbed the steps to the front door, where the selling agent waited with final paperwork. I gave them a few minutes, then nodded to Sarah. It was time. As I approached the house, I saw the moment David spotted me through the glass door panels. His expression froze, confusion replacing the professional mask he'd been wearing. Amanda turned to follow his gaze, her face paling visibly. The selling agent opened the door, smiling broadly. Perfect timing. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I'd like to introduce you to the new owner of your beautiful home. I stepped inside, head high, meeting David's shocked stare directly. Hello, David, I said calmly. Amanda. David's mouth opened and closed. Mom? What are you doing here? Taking possession of my new property, I replied, accepting the keys from the agent with a smile. Thank you so much. Would you mind giving us a few minutes? Family matter. Both agents, sensing the tension, quickly made themselves scarce, retreating to their cars with promises to follow up later. When we were alone, David found his voice. You bought our house?
How?
Why? I bought this house because I could, I said simply. As for how, with cash. The money I've saved and invested carefully over the years. Money you apparently thought should be yours to control. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Margaret, please, you don't understand. We're in a terrible situation. David's firm is under investigation. We've lost almost everything. The children. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. Financial hardship is frightening. Being forced from your home is disorienting and painful. Feeling like you have no control over your own life is devastating. I let the words hang in the air, their significance unmistakable. David's face flushed. This is revenge, isn't it? For what happened with the vase, with the power of attorney. You're punishing us.
No, David.
This isn't revenge. It's a lesson in consequences. You tried to take my home, my independence, my dignity. You treated me as incompetent and disposable because it suited your narrative. You valued a $20,000 vase over your relationship with your mother. I walked over to the empty pedestal in the hallway, running my finger along its surface. The vase is gone, but I'm still here. Still competent. Still independent. And now, ironically, I own the very home where you tried to imprison me. Amanda was openly crying now. Where are we supposed to go? We have nowhere. You have 2 weeks to vacate, as specified in the contract you signed, I said calmly. I suggest you use that time to find suitable accommodations. Perhaps a more modest home that aligns with your current financial situation. David's face hardened. You can't do this. We're your family. Family, I repeated thoughtfully. Yes, we are. And family should protect each other, support each other, respect each other's autonomy.
You forgot that, David.
I haven't. I moved toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. I've revised my will and estate plan. In light of recent events, I've decided to establish a trust for Emma and Tyler's education. The remainder of my estate will go to the Elder Rights Legal Foundation, which helps seniors fight against elder abuse and financial exploitation. David's face went pale. You're disinheriting me? Your only child. I'm ensuring my legacy supports the values I believe in. I corrected. Protection of the vulnerable. Respect for autonomy. Justice for those who have been silenced. I moved toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. I've revised my will and estate plan. In light of recent events, I've decided to establish a trust for Emma and Tyler's education. The remainder of my estate will go to the Elder Rights Legal Foundation, which helps seniors fight against elder abuse and financial exploitation. David's face went pale. You're disinheriting me? Your only child. I'm ensuring my legacy supports the values I believe in. I corrected. Protection of the vulnerable. Respect for autonomy. Justice for those who have been silenced. I opened the front door, pausing on the threshold. You have 2 weeks, as we agreed in the contract. I suggest you start packing. As I walked to my car where Sarah waited, I heard Amanda's sobs and David's angry voice behind me. I didn't look back. Some chapters needed to end before new ones could begin. The house on Oakwood Drive stood empty for 3 months after David and Amanda moved out. I didn't move in. I had no desire to live in a space with such painful associations. Instead, I took my time considering what to do with the property. Meanwhile, word had spread about what had happened. The story was too juicy for a small community to resist. The son who tried to declare his mother incompetent, the mother who ended up buying his house out from under him when he faced financial ruin. People took sides, of course. Some thought I had been unnecessarily harsh. Others applauded what they saw as poetic justice. I paid little attention to the gossip. I was too busy reclaiming my life in meaningful ways. I joined a book club at the library. I took a watercolor class at the community center. I volunteered at the local food bank. Simple activities that reinforced my independence and connected me to the community. David and Amanda had moved to an apartment in a neighboring town. They had reached out several times, their messages evolving from angry accusations to awkward attempts at reconciliation. I responded politely, but maintained firm boundaries. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with hasty apologies or convenient remorse. My grandchildren were another matter. Emma and Tyler had done nothing wrong, and I made sure they knew my door was always open to them. We arranged visits through Victoria, who acted as an intermediary while emotions were still raw. Those visits were initially strained, but gradually became more natural as the children adjusted to our new reality. As for the house on Oakwood Drive, I finally decided its purpose on a rainy Tuesday afternoon while volunteering at the senior center. I had been helping an elderly woman named Rose fill out applications for housing assistance. Rose had recently been displaced when her landlord sold the building she'd lived in for 20 years. She was just one of many seniors in our community facing housing insecurity. If only there were more affordable options for people like me, Rose had sighed, her gnarled hands trembling slightly as she signed her name. Not nursing homes, I'm not ready for that, but safe places where we could live independently without worrying about being pushed out. Her words stayed with me all afternoon. By evening, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the house on Oakwood Drive. The next day, I called Victoria and outlined my plan. She listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions to strengthen the concept. By the time our conversation ended, we had the framework for what would become the Oakwood Senior Residences. The renovation took 6 months. I worked closely with architects to reconfigure the sprawling house into 5 independent living units, each with private entrances and accessible features. The grand dining room became a common area where residents could gather for meals or activities if they chose. The backyard was transformed into a community garden. Throughout the process, I regularly invited Eleonora to consult on the design. Her insights as a senior who valued both independence and community proved invaluable. By the time the project was completed, she had decided to become one of the first residents. The day before the official opening, I gave Victoria and Eleonora a final tour of the property. The transformation was remarkable, from a monument to wealth and status to a warm, welcoming community for seniors of modest means. "It's wonderful, Margaret," Victoria said, admiring the thoughtful details we'd incorporated based on input from senior advocates. "You've created something truly meaningful here." "It feels like coming full circle," I admitted. "This house, which was briefly a place of confinement for me, will now represent freedom and dignity for others who might otherwise be marginalized or controlled." The next morning, local media arrived to cover the opening of the Oakwood Senior Residences. I hadn't sought publicity, but Victoria had convinced me that the project deserved recognition, both to inspire similar initiatives and to raise awareness about elder autonomy issues. I was adjusting a flower arrangement in the common room when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Mom." I turned to find David standing in the doorway, looking uncertain and out of place. He was alone, wearing a suit that seemed slightly too large for him now, as if he'd lost weight since our last encounter. "David," I said, surprised. "How did you know about today?" "It was in the newspaper," he replied, glancing around at the transformed space. "The innovative senior living solution, they called it. They mentioned your name as the founder." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "This is impressive," he said finally. "What you've done with the place." "Thank you." An awkward silence stretched between us. David shifted his weight, then reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope. "I brought something for you." He handed me the envelope. "It's not much, but it's a start." Inside was a handwritten letter and what appeared to be a certificate of completion for a series of counseling sessions focused on family relationships and elder respect. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," David said quietly. "A lot of therapy, too. What I did to you, what we did, it was inexcusable. I've been trying to understand why I behaved that way, how I could have convinced myself it was for your good when it was really about control." I carefully refolded the letter, touched despite my lingering wariness. Understanding why is important. But what matters more is ensuring it never happens again. Not to me, not to anyone else. "I know," he said, nodding. "That's why I've also been volunteering with the Elder Rights Legal Foundation. The same one you're supporting with your estate. I'm helping them draft policy recommendations for stricter oversight of power of attorney abuses." This genuinely surprised me. That's good work, David." "It's not enough," he admitted. "Nothing could really be enough to make up for what I did. But it's something I can do that might help protect others." Another silence fell, less awkward than the first. "Amanda and I separated," he said finally. "After everything that happened, we realized we wanted different things. She's moved back to her parents' place in Connecticut." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said and meant it. Whatever their flaws, I had never wished for my son's marriage to fail. David shrugged slightly. "It was probably inevitable. We were holding things together with appearances and expectations. Once those crumbled." He trailed off, then refocused. "Anyway, the kids are with me most of the time. They miss you." "I miss them too," I said softly. "They're always welcome in my home. You know that." "And me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Will I ever be welcome again?" I studied my son's face, the face I had loved since the moment he was placed in my arms 35 years ago. I saw genuine remorse there and something else. Understanding. Perhaps for the first time, David truly saw me as a person in my own right, not just in relation to him. "Time will tell," I said honestly. "Trust takes longer to rebuild than it does to break. But this," I gestured to the letter, "to his presence here today, it's a beginning." David nodded, accepting the boundary with grace I wouldn't have expected months earlier. That's fair. More than fair, actually. He glanced at his watch. I should go. Let you get back to your opening. I just wanted to see it.
See you.
As he turned to leave, I called after him. David. He paused, looking back. The children. Bring them for dinner on Sunday? My house, not here. 6 o'clock. A cautious smile flickered across his face. We like that. Thank you. After he left, I stood quietly in the common room, the letter still in my hand. I wasn't ready to forgive completely, nor to forget the pain of betrayal. But perhaps there was a path forward, one that acknowledged the hurt while allowing for growth and change. The rest of the opening day passed in a blur of activity. 5 senior residents, including Eleonora, moved into their new homes. Community members toured the facility, many expressing interest in volunteering or donating to support the project. Local officials presented a certificate recognizing the initiative's contribution to addressing senior housing needs. That evening, after everyone had gone, I sat alone on a bench in the community garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The house behind me, once a symbol of my son's attempt to control me, now stood as a testament to independence, dignity, and the right of every person to age on their own terms.